is 42 and is unemployed and non-believer. He has worked for companies that treat their employees poorly. He has no hope. People are not valued. I've experienced the same thing. Our culture does not value human beings nor widows. She's a widow now. She's had a hard time finding work the last 13 years due to her age. And been out of work for a while. And finally got a job. Glad to hear that. But my wage has been cut 50% and no benefits. My wages are less than I was making 15 years ago. You see, folks, this is one reason why we have to keep our network free. There are a lot of people that listen to us that can't afford to support us. They can't afford to get behind a paywall, and I don't want to do that to them. But if you have been blessed, give us your support so we can keep this available for everybody. We're coming back to this topic tomorrow. We clearly have hit a nerve. The phone lines went nuts on this. We'll be back on this tomorrow. Take care.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Fortunately, the last administration left us with a terrible economy. They left us with sky-high prices. They left us with home values that had doubled in just 4 short years, meaning a lot of American families couldn't afford to buy or to rent a home. They left us with a historic debt crisis. Did you know that in the history of the United States of America, we have never had deficits and debt so high as we had under Joe Biden's leadership? And what did all that peacetime debt and deficit, what did all that spending, what did all that waste and fraud get us? It got us an economy where Americans couldn't afford to buy a home, our families couldn't afford to buy groceries, and our people felt like the American dream was slipping away. Now that is the bad news, but now we can talk a little bit about the good news, because I'm proud to say that thanks to all of you, on January 20th, 2025, we started a great American comeback.
Investments in the Trump economy. Welcome to Training Tuesday again. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube. Our X Spaces simulcast is up. Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV now, and Roku. Well, news on the economic front is looking up, even though, as J.D. Vance said, and I'll quote him again, the last administration left us with a terrible economy. They left us with sky-high prices. They left us with home values that had doubled in just 4 short years. In the history of the United States of America, we have never had deficits and debt so high as we had under Joe Biden's leadership, close quote. Well, fortunately, we have started the great American economic comeback. Economic reporting in just the last few weeks shows the economy is recovering from Biden's disastrous policies. We're seeing the lowest core inflation in 4 years, experiencing the lowest mortgage rates since December of 2024, and gas prices and airfares are down. President Trump has won over $5 trillion in new investments from manufacturing industries returning to the United States, reigniting our manufacturing base with a positive outlook for future economic growth once again. But even with these economic indicators, recent reporting also shows many conservatives are still concerned about their financial future due to the current state of the economy. Many are searching for safer, more reliable investing choices because of the geopolitical concerns affecting the global markets, America's market, and record amounts of debt held by consumers and corporations, not to mention the countries. Formerly seen As the foundation of many retirement portfolios, traditional stocks and bonds are now being recognized as susceptible to inflation, market declines, and other economic upheavals. That's where today's guest comes in. Alexander Spillane is the CEO of Fisher Liberty. As of yesterday, it was Fisher Capital, but today it's Fisher Liberty, a new name, and helps investors find the right places to put their investments as economic uncertainty continues to be the overall trend. Fisher Liberty is a full-service, conservative-owned and operated precious metals, gold, and silver investment company that specializes in IRAs. Alexander is also the host of the Right Wing Voice podcast and a rising voice in the conservative movement who has earned a reputation for his really sharp financial acumen and ability to make complex economic concepts accessible to his audience. Welcome to the Rob Maness Show, Alexander.
Rob, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. I appreciate you coming on. We met in person just a few weeks ago, but I had heard of your company and have seen what they were doing. But I have to ask, how does a guy that's a musician become the CEO of a really high-performing, it appears to me, precious metals investment company?
The story is it's a good question. Sounds like, you might have done some research on me, and I hadn't done my research on you. I want to say thanks for your service, Colonel, because you've got quite the background yourself. The truth is that I actually have, as I've gotten more successful in business, I've happened to meet a lot of high performers who still play their instruments. I still play guitar and I still sing, and I enjoy it, but I moved to Los Angeles to pursue entertainment, and I'll tell you, the industry just didn't align with the conservative values I have. So, I just pursued a career in something that I thought was going to actually allow me to work with people who shared the same beliefs that I do. And that's ultimately the most rewarding part of me owning a precious metals company, is that when you look at the key attributes that gold provides for clients, its ownership, its legacy, its privacy. I mean, all the things that we value as conservatives. And it really is more of like a lifestyle decision than a financial one sometimes, right? Because At the end of the day, we have a right to take back control of our finances. And where a lot of people have their money, unfortunately, is either you're in the military, so you know about the TSP system, government managed retirement plan. Then you've got clients who are invested in BlackRock funds and with Vanguard. And I could go on and on about, the perils that people face, but I think that the importance here is voting with your wallet. So people who actually believe that the government spending has become reckless, and they've noticed that long before Doge got involved. I've got my dark MAGA hat on today. I'll tip that to Elon Musk. Long before people got involved with doing the research, I think they had a gut feeling that just something wasn't right. And the problem is with these type of investment vehicles, they restrict you and force you into one area, which are just stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So the reason you see millions of people waking up and looking at alternatives, whether it be gold and silver or even cryptocurrency now, I think the reason you're seeing so many people flock into those investment classes is because they've lost faith in the system, and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. So that kind of leads to my second question, and this is about Fisher specifically and other companies that do this. I've noticed it's hard not to. Other precious metal companies in this space are all over the independent media. So why gold? I think I understand the answer to the question, but I'll be honest, I'm a B economics student. So
yes,
why gold, silver, other precious metals? What makes them attractive in this environment that we find ourselves in?
The simple answer is that these are assets that have a finite supply. So if the government just keeps printing more and more money, and they keep dividing shares of individual stocks that you could buy in Wall Street, there is no finite supply. There's no shortage of those assets. And so when you have these kind of tensions in the economy, you have all this uncertainty, and you have just the math behind it that supports that we're going to have a pullback at some point because we've become we've gone into a point where we're in a bubble, and that could be said about many asset classes, whether it's real estate or whether it's the stock market or whether it's cryptocurrency. I mean, this is the first time that we've seen gold hit this new all-time high. It hit $3,150 yesterday, but I think it's got a long way to go, and here's why. Because think about it this way: if gold didn't move at all, and keep in mind it's globally traded, if gold's price didn't change at all, but the dollar became weaker, it takes more dollars to denominate what 1 ounce of gold costs. Therefore, right, even if there's no influence or there's no more gold mined and there's no shift in any of the availability of the asset in itself, it will still go up if the dollar goes down. And that's why it's regarded as one of the single best hedges against inflation that you can hold in your portfolio. The reasons I like gold, and I recommend it to my audience and to my clients, is for a few key reasons. Number one is I don't encourage people to buy gold with the intention of growing their money, right? And most of the people I'm talking to have this idea that they really want to shift from growth back into value because their retirement accounts right now are very close, if not at the highest balance they've ever seen them, just like where we were in 2007. So that's the cliff before the fall. That's how I see what's going on. When you've got warnings coming out from guys like Elon Musk saying that we're going to face some economic pain in order to implement these changes that will benefit our country long term. But in the short term, what we should expect is some economic pain and some headwinds. So if you want to shift from growth back into value, the best way to do that is go into assets that align with the principle of wealth preservation. And that's the only reason I recommend gold. I recommend it as a way for you to preserve and protect your money against some of these worst case scenarios. And the way it protects you is, number one, the assets are fully insurable because you own them outright. And the reason why there's a threshold on SIPC and FDIC insurance, for example, is because there's a lot of third-party and counterparty risk when it comes to you holding those assets or being a beneficial owner of those assets. When you own gold outright, there's no one that can borrow against it. There's no one that can leverage it. So it actually eliminates that third-party and counterparty risk. And it's also a form of money that's not attached to a central bank, nor is it coupled with a nation's debt. So in the worst case scenario, let's say the dollar loses its status as the world reserve currency, or it continues to lose value due to inflation, or we go in a hyperinflation scenario. And I got to say, these are not far-fetched scenarios because this has happened in other countries, whether it be Germany, Venezuela, Japan. I mean, we've seen currency crisis before. Larry Fink of BlackRock just issued an article or a report that came out of CNBC where he talks about how he believes Bitcoin's actually the biggest threat to the dollar as the world reserve currency. So, I mean, if that's coming from the largest asset manager in the world, you can't take that lightly. You've got to take that seriously, and you have to have something in your portfolio to protect against that. And I think it's just more important now than ever that people start taking those steps. So from a pragmatic perspective, Alexander, how does this work? You specialize, according to your website, in gold and precious metal IRAs. Yes, sir.
So if I had an IRA and I wanted to transfer it to gold or silver or mixture of precious metals, and I own those assets outright, how does that work? Do I get a bunch of precious metals shipped to me to put in my vault?
Great question. Well, first and foremost, clients come to us with big portfolios, and they have a variety of different positions. Whether they have a cash in the bank, they've got a traditional brokerage, they have a Roth, a 401k, or an IRA. The truth is that the tax deferred accounts, in my opinion, I think are the ones that we create the most benefit for clients in. And there's two reasons I say that. Number one is, in my opinion, it's just easier to redirect the current investments a client has rather than, trying to focus on making a brand new purchase. And why is that? Because the client's already set aside the money they have invested for investment purposes. And oftentimes that will represent the majority, if not the entirety, of their life savings. So I believe that it's important that we place a high priority on those accounts to make sure that the client is in a good position for many years to come. But the truth is that once you have made the decision to move your IRA or 401k into gold, if you could snap your fingers right now and just direct your current financial institution to do that for you, it'd be a lot easier than the process that we have to do it. But what we've done is made it as simple as possible, despite that Wall Street's done something genius. They've restricted all the money to stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. There's not a single person I talk to that has an IRA or 401k that lets them hold physical gold. So step one is we got to get these clients the right vehicle. And that vehicle is called a self-directed IRA. A self-directed IRA is an account that allows you to hold all 7 asset classes that were approved by Congress back in the 1970s. So believe it or not, they never limited it, what you can hold to just these products that Wall Street has, right? But again, if you were to hold, let's say, real estate or cryptocurrency or gold and silver, how can these institutions make money off of those positions if they can't borrow against it and if they can't lend money out and leverage those positions somehow or make a fee or commission off of it? So that's why it's not a coincidence. It truly is by design. So step one is we get them the right vehicle. And I encourage our clients and anyone watching to do the research. If you look up a self-directed IRA, Forbes actually calls this the #1 retirement account that all wealthy people have. It's not uncommon to see positions where clients, Mitt Romney reportedly had a $120 million IRA. People ask, how do you get to those numbers? It's by being able to participate in higher profit asset classes instead of just being forced into one area. So it doesn't restrict you to stocks and bonds. You can go into real estate, private equity, other commodities and collateral assets, business and lending, and even cryptocurrency and physical gold and silver. So just like your cash in an IRA, you can't hold that and take possession of it until you take a distribution. So the metals, when you hold them in an IRA, they do get stored in an IRS-recognized depository where it's fully insured. So step one is you set up that IRA. We take care of that process for our clients. There's actually no cost involved. I set up that promotion amongst this firm over the past couple of years to ensure that as many people could get their money out of harm's way as possible. Because the first thing that does for you is it allows you to roll your funds over into a FDIC insured and bank guaranteed cash position. When you move from a 401k or an IRA to a self-directed, it's a 3-step process. It's step one, you set up the account. Step two is you roll it over, and it's tax-free, penalty-free, and fee-free to move that money. And once the funds arrive, that's when we can actually help our clients diversify into different precious metals products. And just the same way, if you were to go in the stock market, you wouldn't buy all of one stock. I wouldn't encourage anyone to just buy one type of precious metals product. There's a variety of products that do different things. Some are better for short-term and long-term goals, and others are better for growth, and some have higher risk. It just really depends. So we really do a good job of making sure that we take all of our clients' goals into consideration, and we look at what's attractive and what's not, go through a process of elimination and exclusion, and we just whittle it down to the choices that make the most sense for their specific situation. And that's why we're able to back our service with a 100% satisfaction guarantee.
Outstanding. Well, we got to take a break, Alex. When we come back, we'll hear a little bit of a clip from Secretary Bessent on interest and mortgage rates, and continue this discussion about Fisher Liberty. We're with the CEO, Alexander Spillane, today. And this is an amazing company, and folks really need to take a really good look at it if you're considering moving your assets around and protecting yourself and hedging against this unstable economic times that we find ourselves in. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
I find interesting is for the past year and a half and during the campaign, most of the media said, oh, the economy is great. It's just a vibe session. Now that President Trump's in office, there's an economic problem. And I'll tell you what the problem was.
We were pretty straightforward on this program, sir.
Well, I haven't seen this program, but in general, this idea that working class Americans didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't know their lived experience. They didn't know what their pocketbooks were feeling. And I'll tell you, President Trump was elected. One of the reasons was the affordability crisis, and we are setting about doing that. So after 4 years of disastrous policies, we're running these gigantic deficits that led to the affordability problem, massive government regulation. So what we had was a demand shock from the government spending that was met by supply constraints with overregulation. So we are in the process of deregulating, which will free the supply side, and we are cutting back the government spending. It took 4 years to get us here. President Trump's been in office 5 weeks, and I can tell you we're working every day. What I will point out, interest rates, the 10-year bond, which I am focused on, have been down every week since President Trump was president. Mortgage rates have been down every week. So that's a pretty good start.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and it's Training Tuesday. And folks, I have to remind everybody, today's April 1st. It's Tuesday, and it's election day in this country. I voted here in Gulfport, Mississippi in our municipal elections, and I hope everybody in Florida 6 and 1 and in Wisconsin are voting for the MAGA candidates because we have to hold the House of Representatives, and the president has endorsed candidates in each of those races, and then the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, which is critically important. We could lose 2 House seats due to Supreme Court leftist redistricting if we lose that seat in Wisconsin. So get out and go vote. You still have time, and do it for the team. And the team is Team America. My guest today is CEO of Fisher Liberty. Was Fisher Capital yesterday. I want to make sure everybody understands that. So if you're out there trying to find the website and everything, check out one of those. I think the new name went live. His name's Alexander Spillane. And Alex, before we went to the break, we were talking about the company and the IRAs and everything. And one of the things that I saw in my research on the company was that since you've taken it over, you've expanded it so much so you had to find new office space. So you're being very successful, and you tend to hire a lot of veterans, military veterans. And I just wanted to thank you for doing that and ask you why that approach and how'd you expand so fast?
Well, those are great questions. It's actually, in my opinion, it's just what got the doors that God wanted to open for me. I always wanted to be in the military. The doors didn't open for me to join personally. I thought about doing reserves. And I think that it's really just about the core values, right? And about the way that I run this company. I run this company as if it's a sports or military organization. But at the end of the day, we all have a very family-centered culture. I got lucky. I found somebody who was a captain in the Army that I worked with. I worked under him. He was one of my mentors at a previous firm I worked at. And then when I started my own firm, I had a group of guys that, worked for me and referred a lot of military guys. And they just kept referring each other. That's how it all started. So I got to say, I was just lucky. And I just noticed that the qualities that the people who had served in the military had were just, they're very disciplined to do this job and to manage the people that are on the floor, right? Like these people build teams and they have other people that do prospecting, like our clients opt into our marketing, and then we call them. And to train those people on how to handle these calls the right way, how not to give opinions but give facts, right? Because everyone hears all this stuff, but there's a level of compliance that we have to adhere to. And when you hear things like in the news about the debt crisis, and you hear about how the stock market could crash, I mean, we have to be careful. We can't just say that stuff. We have to quote like real sources for it. And so It's really just about having the discipline to focus on facts over feelings, because this does get emotional. I'll tell you, a lot of the people in here have seen this, where they saw people lose anywhere from 40 to 60% of their money back in 2008, or they're working with clients who the financial institution won't even let them move their money, and they have this insane amount of control over their finances. And it's sad, because you'd think like, oh, well, if you worked for 30 years, you came this far, not just to come this far, but to be able to have full autonomy and control over your money. But that's oftentimes not the case. So I think that the people that served in the military naturally have a lot of passion for helping each other. And that's what we're doing here. I mean, we're liberating people from a system that is not rigged in their favor by any means. And we're liberating them from assets that actually leave them in bondage, because they don't actually own or control this money or these investments. These financial institutions do, and they put us at risk. In 2008, when that financial crisis hit, if the government didn't give these banks and brokerages collectively, amongst the ones that failed, Glenn Beck reports it to be about $6 trillion that was given. And if they didn't step in and issue that money, people literally would have lost 100% of their funds. So that's just scary for me to think about, that they can get away with this. They get a slap on the wrist, and then they go on business as usual. But who are the ones that suffered? Who lost? Who's the majority of who suffered during that crisis? What was middle America? It's not the top 1%. They recovered just fine. The stories you hear about people's lives that were never the same, those are the clients that we're focused on helping. And it can happen to anybody. You got to be careful. Anybody that I ask, if I say, if you were back in 2008 when you lost money, did you see the warning signs, or were you blindsided by that crash? Most people tell me, well, I was completely blindsided. They had no idea it was coming. And that's sad, because it shows that a lot of people just aren't making it a priority to pay attention. Now, the good news is today we have such an ease of access of information compared to where we were years and years ago, right? Now we have smartphones. Now we have private outlets and podcasters like yourself who actually are getting the truth out and giving people like me an outlet to get this message out, because you're not going to hear this on Fox Business. They're just going to report how well the stock market's doing and everything's sunshine and rainbows until it crashes. And there was a famous meltdown that Jim Cramer had, because he was sitting there saying, like, he was trying to warn people and they wouldn't let him, and they wouldn't listen to him. And that's just how it goes. So you've got to be proactive, and you've got to make those decisions for yourself, because at the end of the day, if you ask your financial advisor, hey, should I move my money out of the stock market and buy gold? You're basically asking him or her, hey, should I take this food off of your table and give it to somebody else? That's how they see it, because the only way they make money is based off of how much money you've got invested. So it's not something that you're going to get recommendations from your advisor. It's something you really have to do your own research about, and it's something that you have to decide for yourself.
Well, I certainly learned something from today's show. I didn't know about the BlackRock issuing the statement about from Fink about cryptocurrency. That's something that I still haven't quite figured out. Well, we got a question over in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that before we go to the next break, Alex. Go ahead. Sorry. Shell is our host over there. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Kevin, sir.
Hi, Kevin.
Good afternoon. What a great show. I just spoke with Jeff Garrett here about 3 weeks ago when they said they were going to go into Fort Knox. Mm-hmm. I said, Jeff, I don't go out in front of my building every day and check on my Rolls Royce because there's not one there. I'm pretty sure it's going to be empty. This has really been a good show. The only thing I would add is just be careful who you work with. You see, the guy, there's a reason they call him a stockbroker, okay?
Yeah.
Every time you talk to him, you're broker.
Oh, you're exactly right. Well, thanks a lot. We appreciate that. That leads me to something that I've been thinking about. Is the stock market behaving the way you are expecting it when the president got elected as we start at the very beginning of his term here? Is it pretty much meeting your expectations so far?
Well, I would say yes, because I expected there was going to be a Trump bump, is what a lot of experts have referred to it as. I believe that we were definitely going to see a boost in the economy initially. Why? Because I think that whenever there's a Republican in office, you do have more lax regulations. You do typically have tax cuts. And I mean, those are the things that we came to expect. Now with the tariffs, it creates a lot of uncertainty. And here's the problem is a lot of the things that actually could cause this economy to fail are related to debt. And now that Doge has exposed all this fraud and people are hearing that it's real, it's not just like, look, everyone's been talking about, oh, we think Social Security is going to go broke, and we believe that that they're borrowing against Social Security and they don't actually have the money to pay everyone out. Come to find out, I think I read that 60% of all the calls that they receive at the Social Security office are fraudulent calls. So it's almost like how are government employees getting paid to take 60% of all the calls and they're fraudulent? I mean, it's like, how could they not be involved somehow? And I just believe that, then they haven't even talked about these PPP loans that everybody got during COVID, right? Where people were just setting up fake businesses and getting these huge loans from the government for nothing. And I mean, and what did that do? Look at what happened in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, all these guys that did this, they went out and bought all this fancy jewelry and cars, and the crime went up because everyone was robbing each other. It was a bad thing, and it was fraudulent. And who paid for it? Well, we paid for it, but we haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg with this. So I think that when the debt's already this bad, and then you couple that with a system that doesn't even have safeguards in place to stop the crime and stop the rampant fraud. I think now that people are seeing that, they're actually like, oh, shoot, this is pretty serious. And then we're putting these tariffs in place at the same time. And now we're tightening down the border. So all these jobs that these illegal immigrants have, for example, that other people wouldn't necessarily want to do, it can hurt the economy. There is actual real scenarios where this can backfire. That's an initial scenario. Over the long term, this is what's best for the country. In the short term, I definitely would anticipate some economic pain. I don't think it's just something that we pull the trigger on and then things get better. Here's how I know that. As a Christian, when I've been spiritually attacked, and anytime I've tried to make a change for the better, it's almost like you get attacked more before you get things get better and God opens up new doors for you, right? That's the case with anything. Same with my business. Whenever you try to scale your business, you're going to face some really serious hurdles, and things get harder before they get easier. That's just how it goes, especially when you make dramatic changes. And I read a quote yesterday, and it said that if you want to be the best version of yourself, it's going to require a lot of goodbyes. And goodbyes are hard. And we not only have to say goodbye to some of these terrible policies that other people in this country are divided on, but we've got to say goodbye to really like a reckless government that's spending. And look, if they did all this, like the person that was just on with the question, Kevin said, is the gold even in Fort Knox? Everyone's been talking about this. Let me be clear. If BlackRock is issuing a warning, amongst many others, by the way, but now they're the biggest one. If they're saying that we have a real threat to the reserve currency status of maintaining the U.S. dollar as our world reserve currency, if we have a real threat there, do you think for a second that even if there was no gold in Fort Knox, that the government's going to come out and announce that? They're going to just tell everybody, hey, everybody, we checked. It's not there. They're never going to tell you that. They're never going to be honest about it. So either scenario, if it is there, here's what I know, is that in 1944, during the Bretton Woods Agreement, when they put all this gold in Fort Knox, they valued the gold at $45 an ounce. On our balance sheet today, that gold is still only valued at $45 an ounce. And Glenn Beck's been talking, Alex Jones and many others have been talking about this. So all they have to do is revalue all that gold. They'll reset the balance sheet because our asset column is going to go up, and it shrinks the liabilities in comparison. So they can only do that one time. So if the gold's all there, that's great news. If it's not there, gold is obviously going to go up, and some people will know. And on the inside, you won't hear about it publicly, but I think that's already kind of what's going on, because that's why J.P. Morgan is flying over all this gold because it's cheaper to just buy a plane ticket than pay the tariff to ship it. So people are bringing it over privately. And I mean, there's shortages all over the place, especially in the ETFs market. So I definitely see some bad signs. And there's huge movement in gold. Not to mention, the price is at an all-time high and it's not stopping. It just went up again today. So I think that, you've got to get in while you can. It's just the single best buying opportunity that I've personally ever seen.
Wow. We're going to take another break, Alex. When we come back, we'll hear from Bob Lighthizer about all the trillions that have went overseas, but the tariffs are going to be coming back. Tomorrow's Liberation Day is what President Trump said. And Alex pointed out that there is going to be some short-term pain associated with this. I want to get his take on what that might look like and how people that are in these markets should be reacting to it. I'm Rob Maness. It's Training Tuesday. We're with the CEO of Fisher Liberty, Alex Spillane.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
Everyone else owns here. That number is a negative $23.5 trillion. And if you said, what was it 20 years ago? It was probably a negative $3 trillion. So we have transferred about $20 trillion worth of our national wealth, and I would say the future income of that wealth, overseas in return for current consumption.
Can you explain that measurement one more time? It's what we own here versus what others own here?
So it's how much Americans own overseas.
Okay.
All over the world. Versus how much everybody else in the world owns here. And it's a real calculation. It's not something I did, right? It's a real statistic. It's been around forever.
And what would that include?
So
that they own here.
So, I mean, so they own $23.5 trillion worth of stuff. But if you said, what is it mostly? It's probably mostly debt. A lot of it's debt. A lot of it is equity in our companies, real estate. Those are the principal things that they own. Those are the big assets. Debt is a big one, but also ownership and equity. A lot of it portfolio. Now, some of it is foreign direct investment, where company actually comes in and buys a piece of land and creates jobs.
Right.
But most of it isn't that. Most of it is just they own U.S. equities. If you think about the United States for most of our history, particularly since the Second World War, we Americans were thought rich because we owned more overseas than people owned in America.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show here. It's Training Tuesday, and my guest is the CEO of Fisher Liberty, Alex Spillane. And we were talking before the break a little bit about the tariffs and tomorrow's Liberation Day, from what President Trump is talking about this tariff implementation process, Alex. And I agree with him. I think we're liberating ourselves from the oppression that other countries have been allowed to do to the American people. So I love the fact that he's saying that. But I also listened to him, and he said, just like you said in the last segment, there is going to be some short-term pain with this. And Lighthizer was kind of describing the size of the challenge from a dollar's perspective, 20-something trillion dollars. So what should we be expecting to see with this short-term pain, and what will it look like when we start coming out of it from your perspective? And how should people handle that?
Well, I think one of the goals is to get countries to come back here that are making products overseas, right? So the first thing you're going to see is asset prices will go up, is what I would anticipate. Before they make those changes and bring business back here, which is a long-term play. It's not going to be overnight like that, right? You're going to see asset prices go up. Things are going to become more expensive. Inflation should continue. I mean, you can't discount that Jerome Powell is still the chairman of the Federal Reserve. James O'Keefe, one of our spokespeople, did an amazing report where they exposed one of the economists at the Federal Reserve who worked under him. He said that he purposely held the line against Trump. So I think that you're also going to see that this reckless Federal Reserve is going to do everything in their power to just make Trump look bad, make his policies look like they're not working. And that's why I think that, a real recession is probably a likely scenario. I think that there's a lot of different factors that go into this. But the main thing is that it doesn't solve the debt problem. And corporate debt's already at an all-time high. So is consumer debt. So if asset prices go up, that only increases that problem. It makes it harder for people to get ahead. And so we saw this once before. I mean, you remember when you couldn't buy a Mercedes for at least 10 or 20,000 over the retail price, just like a lot of cars, Rolexes, and any sort of items that were high value that everybody wanted, that there's a scarcity of, you pay a premium. The same is actually happening in other markets. There's the stock market has the biggest premiums we've ever seen in U.S. history, and so has gold and silver. I mean, gold and silver also have big premiums. I don't see them getting any cheaper, and I think that there's a lot of different ways you could look at this, but I think that rather than focusing just solely on the problems and what this is going to do, is I think that it doesn't matter as long as you're prepared. I mean, the goal is always to go around a storm rather than having to go through it. But if you have to go through it, at least bring your raincoat and put on your rain boots so that you're prepared, right? And that's the logical thing to do. There are some people in disaster events, like the fires that just happened here in Los Angeles, like hurricanes, like Hurricane Katrina was a big one. They told everyone to evacuate, and they just said, no, I'm not going to evacuate. Well, then guess what? If you just choose to ignore the warnings, then you only have yourself to blame if you get hurt. And the last thing we want to see is anybody get hurt as a result of this. But it's the key word here is uncertainty. And I mean, look, there's different perspectives. I think that most economists right now and most of the reports that I'm reading coming from the highest level sources, whether it's Jamie Dimon, the CEO of the biggest bank in the country, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, biggest asset manager in the country, or many of these guys that accurately predicted the 2008 financial crisis, like Jeremy Grantham and Michael Burry and John Hussman and David Rosenberg, formerly of Merrill Lynch. They all say the same thing, which is that they believe that there's going to be a recession coming up. And I just think that naturally you have to get prepared for that. And this is not going to be the ultimate cause of the recession. I think the cause is truly just it's surrounding the debt crisis. And I think that it's just because every 8 to 12 years we have a reset of some sort. This is the longest bull run we've ever had without having a recession. So statistically and mathematically speaking, it's just more likely that we're going to have that scenario than not. And when you couple federal, corporate, and consumer debt at all-time highs, that certainly doesn't help.
Yeah. I mean, when you shake a system and institute a tremor into it when it's on shaky ground already, you should expect that kind of reaction. That's what I'm expecting, at least a mild recession. We've got a question before we go to the break. We'll take a question from the audience real quick, and then when we come back, I want to talk some more about inflation and what's really going on with that. Go ahead, Shell. The question.
We have Wib, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Alex. I have a question about the gold market and the security mechanisms for countries like China who are notorious for inserting unregulated gold into the market, which is disconcerting because late last year, I don't know if it's been confirmed, but they have announced like this gargantuan size mineral deposit of gold that they discovered, like 80 metric tons. What is to stop them from destroying the gold market just by throwing that all on the market at once?
I don't think they're going to throw it on the market, and here's why. Because China right now is the number one importer and the number one producer of gold. They're trying to hoard as much of it as they can, and I believe they're doing it for the same reason that the United States did it back in the 1944 when FDR had everyone turn their gold in. It was because the United States, to champion World War II and close the war out, they had an agreement that said, hey, we own the most gold, therefore we will determine the price of what gold should be. And I think that China is expecting that, no, we might not have that gold in Fort Knox, and we might have a weakness there, and they want to exploit it. Remember that China's goal was to form a new reserve currency. They're leading the BRICS nations movement, which is starting with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS. And guess what? They've onboarded over 50 other countries into BRICS just in the past year and a half. There's many countries who are on the fence. Like I think it was in Hungary. The president of Hungary was saying like, oh, I don't know if I should join the European Union or join BRICS. Why? Because he doesn't know what currency he should have more confidence in. And where BRICS has become strong is that they've talked about backing their currency with gold. And their ultimate goal is to throw the US dollar as a world reserve currency and get other countries to participate in using a different form of money, because that's ultimately the only power that the United States seems to have over China at this point. And China doesn't want to have to answer to the United States. I think that they're trying to just, destroy our country. I see them as a big threat, and they don't have good intentions, And so to your point, I could see why you'd be concerned about them flooding the gold market, but it doesn't benefit them when you say to ruin the gold market. Why? Because if they hold all this gold, the best thing for them would be that the price of gold goes up. It would not make sense for them to flood the market and then try to bring the price down. That wouldn't hurt the United States. It can only benefit them if gold goes up.
Yeah, I would expect that you would see the Chinese communists do whatever step with the gold that will hurt the United States the most. That's been their modus operandi for many, many years now, ever since they declared warfare on us. Well, we got to take our last break, Alex. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about inflation because it is slowly coming down right now. But, with all this uncertainty, especially the debt in the private and government sector, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen. And I think the tariff thing will probably drive some prices up, as you mentioned earlier. And when we come back, we'll talk about that very briefly. And then I want to talk to Alex about his political entry into politics, because he's come in on the side of Donald Trump and America First, and we definitely appreciate it. And I want to investigate a little bit as to why he did that. We'll be right back with Alex Spillane of Fisher Liberty.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at www.foundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Finally, we have some good news on the economy and really the number one issue for many Americans, the cost of living. So we just learned that consumer prices in February increased by 2.8% year over year, 0.2% month over month. Both of these figures were a step in the right direction, and both were better than expected. So this is definitely very encouraging to see, because it's going to, I think, relieve some fears that inflation was perhaps re-accelerating, because this actually breaks a streak of 4 straight months where I think you could see it on the chart all the way to the right, where the inflation rate was going in the wrong direction, right? It was going higher and higher. Finally, we're seeing it dip.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Training Tuesday here on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And my guest is the CEO of Fisher Liberty, once Fisher Capital, Alex Spillane. And we're talking about the economy and how gold or precious metals IRA can help you hedge against this uncertain environment. And uncertainty is the key, isn't it, Alex? I just wanted to show that clip because it's from late February. Which isn't too far back in time. And it's coming from CNN, which I'm sure has to begrudgingly admit that things are slightly improving here. And I think that, I'm an aviator, so I've been taught to always keep my eyes on the horizon if I'm flying visually while using my peripheral vision to look for obstacles or hazards and those kind of things. And that's what I'm trying to do is not try to forget about the short-term pain that's probably going to happen starting tomorrow. Maybe, I don't know. There's been a lot of things come back to the United States. $5 trillion in new investment, I think, as a result of these tariffs, and that's part of the liberation. But as people are looking at that, what's your advice going forward?
Well, my recommendation would be that, you've heard the saying, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, right? So here's the thing, is these stories you hear about people that lost 40 to 60% of their money in the market back in 2008, or lost money in the dot-com bubble, or lost money even during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The truth is that most of the time, more often than not, these are people that have too much exposure to just one area of investing. It's oftentimes because it's all they know. And the truth is, Wall Street has done something genius. I mean, they've conditioned people to believe in that they can trust those positions. It starts with a 401k. I'll tell you a quick story. In California, is where we are. Once you're even if you're a private company, once you have 5 employees, you're legally required to offer a 401k to those employees. Now, every payroll company that I ever worked with, and I shopped around to try and find one that's different, but they all basically force you to pair with a Wall Street brokerage, whether it's Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab or T. Rowe Price or Empower. They don't give you an option. So what that means is now if I offer that 401k and my employee doesn't opt out of it, a portion of their paycheck is now automatically getting sent to Wall Street every single pay period. So every 2 weeks, and that's our pay cycle, 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, they get a portion of that money sent to Wall Street. Are you kidding me? That's a racket. And they've designed it this way. Like you don't have a say in it. You don't have the ability to say, oh, I want it to go into a real estate fund, or I want it to go into a privately held, FDIC insured, bank guaranteed account where it won't lose money, in a simple interest bearing account. Nope, it has to go to Wall Street. So my recommendation is to assess where you are versus where you could be. And I mean, when it comes to investing, I see 2 strategies that have worked really well. You can think of all these different asset classes as the different colors of a rainbow. One strategy is you can touch on every single color. That's safer, in my opinion, than going aggressive just in one color, right? Like if you're all on, it's like roulette. You're all on red, but it hits black, you just lost your money, right? So if you're touching on everything, just like you would on a roulette table, like you could actually get a general appreciation. You might not get an explosive amount of growth if one area is doing really well and you don't have such high exposure. But that's why the other strategy would be, instead of touching on every color and being more conservative, you move from color to color. So the saying is, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. But there's actually nothing wrong with that as long as they're in the right basket, right? So over the past several years, I don't see how the stock market would have been the wrong basket. It's done phenomenal. Nobody's lost a significant amount of money. Everything's been great. But now's the time to get more defensive. And you've got to get more defensive if you want to preserve and protect what you have, because the key investment thesis that I've always followed, and this is coming from the top from guys like Warren Buffett, this is investing 101. You buy low and you sell high. So if your strategy is, oh, I'm just going to ride this out, you're not even following key investment thesis. You're literally just aloof. So if you're in an IRA or 401k, the great thing is that you can actually sell tax-free, penalty-free, and fee-free. And that's the best part, is that it literally, I don't see a disadvantage for clients to do that. I don't see a disadvantage for people to move out of harm's way, reduce their exposure to an area that everyone's warning about. And when they do it today, they're doing it while the market's still close to an all-time high, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's literally like just your profit taking. You're taking the chips off the table. And at least do that with the profits, and only play with the house's money at this point, because, I mean, you are at risk, and experts are telling the people that they're at risk. It's just another article that came out today on CNBC. Goldman Sachs, I'm going to read this on my phone because I was reading it during the break. It says here, Goldman Sachs experts expect aggressive duties from the White House to raise inflation and unemployment and drag economic growth to a near standstill. So they see the Trump tariffs spiking inflation, stunning growth, and raising recession risks. Everything I talked about. Goldman Sachs and BlackRock are probably the two biggest asset managers in the country. I mean, so if they're warning this stuff, look, they don't make money unless you stay investing with them. And they're literally giving people reasons not to invest right now. So I think that speaks volumes. It really is very telling. They're not like trying to make, this isn't a secret, everybody. It's not a secret. The economy's in trouble. Donald Trump knows it's in trouble, and he's trying to fix it for the long-term benefit of this country. But it's not going to come without a little bit of economic pain in the beginning. So you can actually take advantage of that. You don't have to sit around and do nothing, right? You don't have to just wait and see what happens. You can take action today. You can get your money out of harm's way, and you can reposition into an asset that's done better than anything else during these scenarios. And I'll give you a statistic. From the year 2007 to 2011, the same period of time we had the 2008 recession when real estate got slashed and the stock market lost 57% of its value. Gold did over 250%. And silver did even better. It did 390%. So even though gold's gone up over 90% in the past 2 years,
right?
That's a very small number compared to the last bull run we saw at 255%. So it's got a long way to go. I'm anticipating great things from gold and for our clients. And already our clients have just done phenomenal over the past couple of years. So I think there's just much more to come. And guess what? It all comes down to one thing: timing and positioning. On the other side of every crisis is an opportunity. So there's guys like Robert Kiyosaki who made a fortune during the last recession. And the way they did that was by getting out of harm's way and not losing their money when everyone else did, and then being able to buy assets at a lower cost. So when we look at that thesis, buy low, sell high, look at around. Real estate's at an all-time high. Stock market's at an all-time high. Cryptocurrencies are very close to all-time highs. And what's the only thing that's relatively low? Well, silver is still about 50% off of where its all-time was. It's like 47% off of its all-time high at $50 an ounce. So there are assets that in precious metals that are relatively low. And that's what I would recommend. Is I would encourage anybody to really just focus on diversifying as for starters. And if you're more advanced and you know what you're doing, then taking even stronger positions in precious metals can prove to be very profitable and very successful for you, especially in this environment.
That is the most frank discussion that I've heard about what's really happening today, and I want to thank you, Alex. Tell folks how they can find you guys and take advantage of being able to look at what you're doing and what you're offering there.
All right. Well, we just did a new partnership with Mike Lindell. And I know you're probably a fan of his as well. I've been a fan of his a long time, so it's like a dream come true for me. And we have a promotion that we started at the beginning of CPAC about a month and a half ago, but I'm still running this because we just did our first episode of an appearance with Mike on his network. So if you text the keyword metals, METALS, metals to the number 26786. Again, text metals to 26786. You're going to qualify for our new presidential gold guide that's coming straight from Mike and his team. And you'll also be able to qualify for a free MyPillow with that guide as a special thank you if you do move a qualifying account. If you also go to MikeLindellGold.com, we have a special promotion there where you can qualify for up to $20,000 in free silver with a qualified purchase. So text metals to 26786 or visit MikeLindellGold.com for more information, and someone from our team will be sending that out to you. And we look forward to connecting with you all and answering your questions. And ultimately, our goal is to help you to a more conservative and secure position.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. We appreciate it. Hope to get you back as a regular sometime as we go forward here, because this is critically important information. And folks, I did not know about the promotion, but that's a great move. I'm an affiliate of MyPillow myself, so we appreciate you partnering with Mike Lindell. I'm excited for you too, man. I appreciate it, and I'm so glad that you're on Team MAGA and Team America First.
Yes.
It's
the Patriots are in charge.
Exactly. It's Americans like you that we need on this team and working hard for us. So we appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday, I got Dr. John West. We're going to talk about Christian universities and why they're failing. I'll see you then on The Rob Maness Show.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Slingshot TV. I am your host, Troy Smith. I'm so glad to be with you today, because today is a very special episode. I don't get a chance on here to talk much about where I come from, because we're talking about the news so often. But in my journey, there's been one man that's done more to help me grow as a professional than any other person that I know. This next guest of mine, he really, I met him through a mutual friend, Michelle Terrace, a great woman, back in 2023. And I don't think there's been a day that's gone by since then that I haven't spoken to him. He's really important to me. I believe he's the most accomplished political consultant in the history of the United States of America. To my knowledge, there's no individual that has participated in more successful presidential campaigns, and there's nobody that I respect more professionally, politically, and all. I welcome onto the show now my hero, my good friend, Roger Stone. Sir, welcome to Slingshot TV for the first time. It's an honor to have you.
Troy, first of all, let me congratulate you for the tremendous success of Slingshot TV. We're very proud of the fact that you're an alumni of the Stone Zone. Who knows, you might be back there soon. And I've always enjoyed working with you because you may be the hardest working man in investigative journalism. And you are always very careful to get the facts exactly right. So it's a great honor for me to be here. A lot of political news to talk about. And I feel like I'm back home. I feel like I'm back in the saddle. So let's get into it.
Let's do it, Roger. You know, we had so many great episodes there on the Stone Zone, and one of the things we talked about time and time again is the political realignment that's occurred in America under President Donald Trump. This is a historic alignment, but as we've gone into this presidency, we've seen pushback from Republicans in the House and Senate on that MAGA agenda. And I think the result is this boiling over that's happening in the Republican base and the Democrat base. We got news just yesterday, Roger, that the Democrats have taken a state Senate seat in Pennsylvania. We have a headline to put up on this. A Democrat, James Malone, has won a PA Senate race in a plus 15 Trump district. And many people are pointing to this, Roger, saying there's a possibility that this is leaning towards a Democrat takeover in 2026. I want to get your thoughts on this because is this just something that's happened in the ether here? Is this something that is an indicator? What's your read on what's going on in this Pennsylvania Senate race?
Boy, I think what we have here is a situation in which we are the victims of our own success. So in these special elections, this one in particular, but evidently from what I read, also true in the Florida district, I think it's number 6, Mike Waltz's seat, Democrats are highly energized. That's because they are angry that Donald Trump is executing and enacting his America First agenda. You see, they like open borders. They like DEI policies. They like men playing in girls' sports. They have no plan for the economy or for affordable housing. They really don't want America to be first. They're furious, particularly because, as he promised, President Trump, working with Elon Musk, is looking into the waste, fraud, and corruption in federal spending. And Troy, they're not finding millions, they're not finding billions, they're literally finding trillions. Ridiculous things. I mean, people who are 160 years old cashing a Social Security check, that's our money. Democrats, therefore, are very highly energized because they hate Trump. It's an anti-Trump vote. Republicans, on the other hand, are very happy right now, so happy that they are complacent. In their view, everything's fixed. We elected Donald Trump. They don't realize that this fight is ongoing. So in these special elections, there's a greater intensity for turnout among Democrats than there is among Republicans. And I think that's what explains this special election in Pennsylvania. I think it's what potentially is a problem in the Florida special election. And I think it's the principal reason why the decision was made today by the president to withdraw the nomination of Elise Stefanik for the UN ambassador position, because her seat in upstate New York, which is a fairly reliable Republican district, would be at risk under these circumstances. The mistakes that I think some political analysts make is taking today's dynamics and say, well, this shows that the Democrats will win back the House in 2026. That's light years from now in political terms. You can't really read, you can't read anything into it. This is about the dynamics of right now.
Absolutely, Roger. And I think that's a very fair point. And there's another aspect to this. You mentioned that Florida 6 race. We have a headline that we can put up on that. GOP leaders raise alarm bells over a Florida special election, and this is supposed to be a district that's deep red, and it's turning out to be a lot more difficult for Republicans than they expected. We saw the withdrawal. You talked about the withdrawal of Elise Stefanik from the UN ambassadorship position. It appears that this Mike Waltz going up to the White House is going to have perhaps an effect in a House of Representatives, Roger, that's just 1 or 2 seats away. I'd like you to talk about, just for a second, the Democrats are really playing for this House of Representatives. And I wanted you to speak to the idea, when Republicans have the House of Representatives, we don't see movement on any of the key issues that Republicans vote for. But yet the Democrats, when they have control, they pass $10 trillion spending bills, bill after bill after bill. Why do the Democrats seem to understand the power of the House while the Republicans just can't get it together?
Well, because the Democrats are ideologically monolithic. They're all Marxists, and therefore they're all on board for the Marxist agenda. Whereas the Republican caucus is somewhat more diverse. We have your establishment Republicans. They're really only interested in getting reelected and getting a paycheck, raising more money, getting reelected, and getting another paycheck. That's all they really want. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to bring fundamental change like Donald Trump. They give lip service to their support for Trump because Trump is extraordinarily popular in the base, and he's, in most cases, more popular than they are in their own district. So they give lip service to the agenda, but they're not willing to go fight for the agenda. And then on the other hand, you have the firebrands in the House, people like Tim Burchett and Eric Burleson and Anna Paulina Luna and Paul Gosar and others, people who are fighters, people who realize that the reason they went to Washington is to fight for fundamental reform. And if you're the Speaker, Mike Johnson, who I think is a good man trying to do a good job, you have to get a majority of the vote for anything. So let's take, for example, I don't know. How about the impeachment of Joe Biden? We have, from the House Oversight Committee, we have hard evidence that members of the Biden family and Biden himself took millions of dollars from Russia, China, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Romania, so on. There's more than enough evidence there to impeach Joe Biden, to vote articles of impeachment, but I'm not sure that had the Speaker wanted to do that before the election, that he could have gotten the necessary votes. And then you look at this situation where we have this incredible judicial overreach, where we have federal judges who are acting well beyond their legal authority, essentially usurping the executive authority of President Trump, saying, well, for example, no, Trump cannot deport dangerous illegal terrorists and criminals. Well, of course he can. He has that executive authority, but a judge in D.C. says he doesn't. Now you go to the appeals court, and of course they uphold the lower court judge because it's D.C. I mean, this is the same court that upheld essentially the unconstitutional gag order against me when I was standing trial in the Russian collusion hoax in that same jurisdiction. So in D.C., just to be clear, the law, the facts, the evidence, the Constitution, the rules, none of these things matter. What matters is the agenda of the radical left and the politicized judges in that jurisdiction. So everybody says, oh, impeach these judges, impeach these judges. Well, that requires a majority in the House and then 2/3 of the Senate, which is a high barrier indeed. And technically, you can't impeach a judge because you disagree with their rulings, no matter how unconstitutional or crazy their rulings may be. You can only impeach a judge for malfeasance, for criminal activity, or some other high crime and misdemeanor. So theoretically, you can't impeach a judge because you don't like their decisions.
Well, and I think that is a good point, Roger. You know, we talk a lot about the federal judges and we talk about the idea that these people need to be removed. But, you know, to me, the judges are more of a story of the betrayal of these rhino Republicans in the Senate, because it was under Mitch McConnell that they worked with the Biden administration and Chuck Schumer to confirm hundreds of judges. I believe the count is 238, Roger. So during Biden's last term, the same senators that we're going to cover in our show tomorrow, John Cornyn and Mitch McConnell and all these people are really coming out and during the Biden administration were approving these judges who are now assaulting President Trump's ability to uphold the rule of law. I know that you talked about field hearings, and I thought that that was so interesting, the idea that we can move some of these cases that are being held in D.C. where you can't get a fair trial and have them outside of D.C. in whatever jurisdiction that the person is actually from. I think that's a much more fair system, although that's not really related to the exact rulings that we're talking about. But there's one quick point I wanted to make and ask you about on the Senator Randy Fine and Florida's 6th district. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has been telling people, Roger, for years that he created a solid red Florida where there's not any question as to whether Republicans will dominate in the future. He's called it the new Texas. He's called it all sorts of things. This race highlights that this red wall that Ron DeSantis brags about, it's not real, is it?
Well, I mean, first of all, this district is not as solidly red as the 1st district. That's the one that was represented by Matt Gaetz and Jimmy Petronis, who is the state CFO. I think will win that election handily. Randy Fine is controversial. Remember, he was originally a supporter of Ron DeSantis, and then he switched to support Donald Trump. That made Ron DeSantis, as I recall, very angry. This is not as Republican a district. It is a nominally Republican district. Walz could easily get reelected there. He could get reelected there tomorrow if he wanted to, but he left the seat to become the national security advisor. Look, it's not over until it's over, and we don't know what happens this weekend. Does the president drop in on his way to Mar-a-Lago? Maybe he drops in, and that would make a difference. This is not a question of not enough votes to win. The Republican votes exist in the district to win. It's a question of how do you motivate them to turn out in a special election. If a Democrat wins this seat in the special, they will lose the seat in the next November election when we have a normal turnout. But we can't really risk that. I think two things, Troy. First of all, I think the House made an egregious mistake in the case of Florida's 14th district. Now, in the 14th district of Florida, former Navy Commander Rocky Rockford challenged Kathy Castor, who's the daughter of a former congresswoman. And Rockford ran a very good campaign, and I think Rockford actually won. The problem was that the election board officials counted, I think it was 53,000 mail-in votes from voters that when you go check their registration card, they have no birth date and they have no social security number, meaning they're not legal. Once Rockford figured this out, he challenged it in the appropriate place to challenge it. That's in the U.S. House of Representatives Administration Committee. That is where elections should properly be challenged for the House. It's important to recognize that the House itself is the final arbiter of who has won an election. The House decides who has been duly elected and properly elected. And therefore, the House Administration Committee, once they analyzed the evidence, which Rockford supplied, could have unseated Castor and could have seated Rockford, which is what they should have done. Unfortunately, 3 weeks ago, roughly, the House Administration Committee, on a technicality, rejected Rockford's claim, saying that he hadn't brought it by a certain deadline set by the state, a deadline that the state never actually announced. It was a bogus, gutless decision, and they'd have one more seat right now if they had seated the guy who really won the election.
Well, that's putting it very plainly. Before we get off of this topic of Florida, Roger, one thing I wanted to bring up and this is the speculation about the governor's race. Byron Donalds has been convinced to run, I would say, by President Donald Trump. Trump puts out a statement just a few days later. Donalds announces he's running for governor. and she hasn't formally announced, but there's growing speculation. I've received tips in the last couple days that an announcement is imminent that Casey DeSantis is going to announce for governor of Florida in 2026. Now, I'm interested to get your thoughts how this race is going to shake out, because this really is a battle between Trump and DeSantis in Florida for the